The first encounter. The stars twinkled above as the mighty fleet of the Galactic Empire cruised through the vast emptiness of space. Their mission was simple: to conquer a new world. They had already defeated countless species across the galaxy. Their technology was advanced, and their strategy was perfect. The Empire was unbeatable, or so they thought. The alien ships, sleek and powerful, had arrived near Earth. Their sensors had detected the humans, a species they considered primitive, insignificant. The Empire had always crushed smaller civilizations, and they expected no different this time. Humans, they thought, were nothing but animals with tools. The aliens had no reason to fear. On Earth, a team of human soldiers was preparing for the inevitable. They had no advanced weapons like the aliens, nor did they have the might of a galactic fleet. But they had something else: courage, determination, and an unexpected secret weapon: their smile. As the alien fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, the humans readied themselves for a battle they knew they might not survive. But there was something different about this encounter. While the aliens expected panic and fear, what they witnessed was something far stranger. The human soldiers, standing side by side, were smiling. General Zalcor, the commander of the alien fleet, observed the strange sight through his ship's large windows. His eyes narrowed. What were they doing? Smiling in the face of certain death. This was unheard of. Every alien species they had ever faced had shown fear, desperation, or at least the will to survive, but not the humans. The humans smiled. Zalcor had studied hundreds of species, yet none had ever done this. In war, there was only one rule: you either fight or surrender. But these humans weren't surrendering. They were happy. He turned to his officers, demanding answers. How are they not afraid? He asked sharply. His lieutenant, equally baffled, replied, "We don't know, General. They seem to be enjoying it." Zalcor scoffed. "This is foolishness. There's no time for games. Send the fighters in. End this now." The order was given, and the alien fighters dove toward Earth, firing deadly lasers into the atmosphere. But still, the humans smiled. They stood their ground as explosions rocked the ground around them. The battlefield, usually a place of chaos and terror, became almost surreal with the calm, confident expressions of the human soldiers. From the command center on Earth, General Morgan, the leader of the human forces, stood watching the attack unfold. His eyes didn't leave the screen as his soldiers fought with everything they had. But there was no panic, no fear. His soldiers were doing something unexpected. They were laughing. "Commander Morgan," a soldier called out, "we've got a breach in Sector 3. They're coming in fast." Morgan didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He simply smiled. "Prepare to counter. Keep moving forward." The soldiers under his command didn't need any more orders. They had faith in their leaders and their fellow soldiers. They knew they were outmatched. But that didn't matter. They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting for something bigger, something no alien army could understand. They were fighting for the survival of humanity, and more importantly, for each other. On the alien side, confusion spread. The aliens were used to fear, the trembling of their enemies as they faced certain destruction. But here, the humans stood unshaken. They didn't cower. They didn't panic. They didn't even look afraid. In fact, they were almost joyful. Zalcor's frustration grew. "What is this nonsense?" he muttered, clenching his fists. "This shouldn't be happening." For the first time in his long military career, Zalcor was uncertain. He didn't know how to respond to an enemy who wasn't afraid of death. His eyes locked onto the human leader, General Morgan, who continued to stand there, smiling as his soldiers fought with a passion the alien generals had never seen before. "Get me a close-up of that human," Zalcor ordered. The video feed zoomed in on Morgan, showing him surrounded by explosions, yet his face remained calm, almost serene, as if he were watching a parade rather than a deadly battle. Zalcor's mind raced. Was this a trick? Was this some kind of psychological warfare? But no, the humans weren't pretending. They weren't scared. They truly seemed to be enjoying this fight. For a moment, the alien fleet hesitated. This wasn't the kind of battle they were used to. Every time they had invaded a planet, they had met fear and surrender. But now, faced with an enemy that appeared to be laughing in the face of danger, their confidence began to waver. The humans weren't like any species they had encountered before. What could possibly drive these people to smile while fighting a battle they had no chance of winning? This was something beyond their understanding, and that, more than anything, was the first spark of doubt. For the first time, the alien forces began to question their own superiority. As the battle raged on, the humans continued to fight, and despite the overwhelming odds, they were not backing down. Not because they believed they could win, but because they were fighting for something far greater, the spirit of humanity itself. And so, the first encounter between the humans and the Galactic Empire was not just a battle of weapons, but a battle of wills. The aliens might have had the power, but the humans had something they couldn't measure, something far more dangerous than any weapon: their courage. And it was that courage, embodied in their smiles, that would start to shift the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The aftermath of the first encounter left the galaxy stunned. The Galactic Empire had never faced such an unexpected outcome. General Zalcor, the commander of the alien fleet, couldn't shake off the image of the human smiles, even as he reviewed the battle reports. His officers were equally baffled, unable to offer any explanations that made sense. As their fleet retreated, Zalcor ordered a full debriefing. He couldn't understand how humans, a species he thought of as weak and primitive, had stood their ground with such resolve. It wasn't just their lack of fear, it was their attitude toward the battle itself. It seemed as though they were enjoying the chaos, even in the face of certain defeat. In the depths of the Galactic Empire's command center, Zalcor pored over the footage of the battle. The humans, smiling and laughing as they fought, seemed to have no concept of the sheer scale of the destruction around them. How could a species so inferior to the Empires might behave like this? "General, we've analyzed the human transmissions," his officer said, snapping Zalcor out of his thoughts. "It appears they were broadcasting their own messages, but not in a way we can fully decode." There was no fear in their voices, no desperation, just joy. Zalcor clenched his fists. "What's their game? Are they mocking us?" The officer hesitated before replying. "We believe they genuinely don't see this as hopeless. They seem to be enjoying themselves in the fight. It's strange. Most species would have panicked by now, but not the humans." Zalcor was silent for a long time. The words "most species" echoed in his mind. He had never come across a species that defied expectations the way humans did. As the Empire's greatest military strategist, he had planned for every possible outcome. But this was beyond anything he had ever faced. Meanwhile, back on Earth, General Morgan and his troops had returned to their bases, their faces still reflecting the strange sense of satisfaction that had taken hold of them during the battle. No, they hadn't won, but that didn't matter. The real victory was something intangible: their unity, their courage, and the unshakable belief that they had faced their enemy with all they had, without surrendering. Morgan sat at his desk, staring at the reports coming in from around the world. There was a sense of calm among his soldiers that hadn't existed before. They were no longer afraid of the aliens. After that first encounter, they had realized something important. They were not powerless. Across the room, one of his officers, Lieutenant Harris, looked at Morgan with an eager expression. "Sir, the alien fleet is retreating. Should we press the attack?" Morgan shook his head, leaning back in his chair. "No, let them go. We need time to regroup. But I believe we've made a statement. They may have the technology, but we've shown them we won't bow down." The lieutenant nodded, though confusion still clouded his features. "But we're still outnumbered. We don't even have the same kind of weaponry they do. How can we stand against them?" Morgan gave a small smile, his eyes glinting with resolve. Sometimes, it's not the weaponry that makes the difference. It's the will behind it. Back on the alien side, Zalcor was still processing the events. He had gathered his highest-ranking officers for a meeting. They were all concerned, though none of them dared to admit it. "General," one of the officers began hesitantly, "the humans, they didn't just fight. They fought with something we don't understand. They smiled during the battle. Not even the most powerful races in the galaxy do that." Zalcor stood up, pacing the room, his mind racing. "I've never seen anything like it. They didn't react the way we expected. They didn't fear us. They smiled as we attacked, as though they weren't afraid of death." He turned to his second-in-command, his voice firm. "We need to know more about these humans. I want every resource at our disposal focused on understanding them. There has to be a weakness, something we can exploit." The officer nodded. "Yes, General. But if I may, perhaps we should consider an alternative strategy. Instead of destroying them, maybe we should." Zalcor cut him off, his eyes narrowing. "No, we cannot afford to show weakness. They mocked us in battle. We will not let them get away with it." The officer hesitated, but said nothing more. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. The Empire had underestimated the humans, and now they were facing the consequences. But Zalcor was determined to make them pay. He would not allow such defiance to go unpunished. As he sat down to strategize, the image of the humans smiling in the midst of chaos haunted him. It was an image he couldn't shake. It represented something far more dangerous than he had ever anticipated. A species willing to face death with joy, with hope, and with a strength he couldn't understand. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Morgan stood outside, watching the stars. The battle had left its mark on him, but he didn't feel fear. He felt something else, a sense of hope. They had faced an overwhelming enemy and hadn't backed down. They had smiled, and in doing so, had sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity would not be defeated so easily. The shockwave of the first encounter had rippled through the galaxy, and neither the humans nor the aliens would ever be the same. The true battle, it seemed, was just beginning. And neither side knew what the other would do next. But one thing was certain: the humans had just made their first move in a war that no one had expected them to win. As the shockwaves of the first encounter reverberated across both Earth and the alien empire, tensions began to rise. The aliens, who had once believed they were the supreme force in the galaxy, were now uncertain. And the humans, previously considered primitive and insignificant, were beginning to realize something important. They weren't just a footnote in the galaxy's history. They were a force to be reckoned with. Back on Earth, General Morgan stood at the front lines, observing the preparations for the next phase of their defense. The first battle had been a surprising success, but it was only the beginning. The aliens had retreated, but no one believed for a moment that they would give up. In fact, the humans knew that they had to prepare for the inevitable counterattack. "We've shown them we won't back down," Morgan muttered to his officers, his eyes locked on the horizon. "But that doesn't mean they won't come back stronger." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris, nodded gravely. "We've been making technological advances, sir, but we're still outgunned. Their ships, their weapons, we don't stand a chance if they bring their full force to bear." Morgan turned to face him, his gaze unwavering. "We've made them think. We've made them question everything they know about war. But we can't rest. We have to push them to the edge, force them to confront something they don't understand. And if we have to bleed to do it, then that's what we'll do." Meanwhile, on the alien side, Zalcor was dealing with an internal crisis. His command had been shaken by the humans' unexpected resistance, and his fleet was still in disarray. The human fleet wasn't large, but the courage and unexpected tactics of their soldiers had left a lasting impression. Zalcor paced furiously in his war room. "What is taking so long? We should have wiped them out already. Why do they keep fighting back?" His officers were quiet, unsure how to respond. One by one, they had been reporting strange occurrences. Ships that should have been decimated had survived, and strange energy readings were detected from the humans' technology, things that couldn't be explained. Yet there was something else, something that disturbed them all. The humans weren't acting like they were afraid. They weren't hiding in fear, as most species would. No, the humans seemed emboldened. A soft voice broke the silence. "General, perhaps it's time we reconsider our approach." Zalcor whipped around, eyes blazing. "What are you suggesting, officer? That we give up? That we let them mock us further?" "No, General," the officer replied carefully. "But maybe it's not just about our power. Maybe they have something we're overlooking, something that makes them different." Zalcor gritted his teeth. "You think I don't know that? I've seen it with my own eyes. Their ability to fight with such confidence, with no fear. They don't even tremble at the thought of death. I'll tell you one thing. I will not allow this to continue. We cannot let a primitive species stand in the way of the Empire." Yet, deep down, Zalcor's thoughts churned. He couldn't deny it. The humans were unlike anything he had ever encountered. Something was happening that he couldn't explain. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that humanity was changing the rules of warfare. Meanwhile, back on Earth, a quiet sense of determination was spreading across the globe. People were watching the news, hearing about the alien threat and the unexpected victory in the first battle. They saw their leaders standing strong, and it gave them hope. It gave them the courage to fight for something bigger than themselves. Morgan stood in front of a global broadcast, speaking directly to the citizens of Earth. "The enemy we face is unlike any we've ever encountered. They are powerful, ruthless, and relentless, but they are not invincible. We have already shown them that. And we will show them again. Together, we are stronger than anything they can throw at us." His words resonated across the world, bringing unity to the people of Earth. The idea that the human race had fought back, had stood its ground, and even smiled in the face of a deadly enemy, became a rallying cry. No longer were the humans the underdogs in this fight. They were determined to stand tall and defend their home. But as General Morgan prepared for the next phase of the battle, there was a sense of unease in the air. The alien empire wasn't going to take this insult lightly. They were regrouping, and they were coming with everything they had. On the other side of the galaxy, Zalcor gathered his fleet once more. The defeat had humbled him, but it also fueled his rage. This would not go unanswered. He would personally lead the next assault, and he would make sure that the humans understood the cost of their defiance. "Prepare for the final assault," Zalcor ordered. "This time, we'll crush them completely. And this time, there will be no smiles. There will be only silence." The first battle was over, but the war was far from won. Humanity had made its mark on the galaxy, but it was clear that the aliens were not ready to give up. The final reckoning was coming. And as Zalcor prepared his fleet, General Morgan braced himself for the storm that was about to hit Earth. Both sides were preparing for the next step, but neither knew what the other had up its sleeve. It would take everything the humans had to survive what was coming. And no one, not even Zalcor, knew how this war would end. The tension between Earth and the alien empire was at its peak. On both sides, the battle was no longer just about weapons, tactics, and strength. It was about survival, intelligence, and what it truly meant to be alive in a universe that seemed to be full of more advanced, more ruthless species. Humans had proven their resilience, but the question now was whether their courage would be enough to outwit an enemy that had far greater firepower. As the alien fleet prepared for their next move, General Morgan gathered his top strategists and officers in a darkened command center deep beneath the Earth's surface. The previous battle had been a victory, but it had also shown that humanity's technology was nowhere near the aliens' advanced capabilities. If they were going to win, they would need something more, something that wasn't just about firepower. "We've learned something important," General Morgan began, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "The aliens don't understand us. They don't understand how we fight or how we think. They believe they can just crush us with their superior technology and sheer numbers. But they're wrong. It's not their power that should scare us. It's their inability to adapt." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Harris, looked up, puzzled. "You mean they don't think we'll survive? They underestimate us?" Morgan nodded. "Exactly. They think we're predictable, but we're not. The one thing we have that they don't is unpredictability. We're human, and that's something they can't plan for." Back in the alien fleet, Zalcor was beginning to question everything. His frustration from the previous defeat had not subsided, but now there was another issue. The humans, their tactics, their unpredictability, and their courage in battle were wearing him down. He had ordered his forces to regroup, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The humans were out of their league, and yet they were still fighting back with ferocity he had never expected. "We've underestimated them," Zalcor admitted, pacing back and forth in the war room. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered before. It's as if they embrace the chaos. We'll need to be more careful. The next phase must be calculated." His closest advisor, a sharp strategist named Draxer, raised a brow. "What do you suggest, General? We can't keep underestimating them. They've proven they can stand toe-to-toe with us." "I'll lead the next assault myself," Zalcor declared. "We'll use every weapon we have. We'll show them the full might of the Empire. And this time, we'll make sure they don't have a chance to recover." While the aliens were plotting their next move, Earth's leaders were not resting. Morgan's words resonated throughout the human command, sparking something even more dangerous: a collective will to defy the odds. The people of Earth were not just fighting for their planet. They were fighting for something much bigger. The battle had become a symbol of humanity's resolve to survive, to endure, and to thrive. "We have something they don't," Morgan continued to his team. "We have heart. We have hope. And we're willing to sacrifice everything to protect our way of life. Let's give them something they won't expect." The next step was to implement the humans' most unpredictable weapon: the element of surprise. They would use their knowledge of alien weaknesses, their familiarity with terrain, and their ability to think on their feet to level the playing field. For once, they would not simply respond to alien attacks. They would initiate their own, forcing the alien empire into a defensive position. As the days ticked by, the tension grew unbearable. On Earth, people watched, listened, and hoped for a sign that their leaders were succeeding. Families huddled together, discussing plans for the future, and others offered prayers for those fighting on the front lines. The world was united in one common purpose: to defeat the alien threat that had come to their doorsteps. One evening, as the sun set behind the Earth's horizon, Morgan stood outside, looking up at the stars. He knew that every decision he made from this moment onward would decide the fate of his people. Every victory or loss would reverberate throughout history. And yet, in his heart, he still believed, against all odds, that humanity could prevail. Back in space, Zalcor prepared to launch the final assault. The alien empire had decided that no more mistakes could be made. This time, they would bring the full force of their technology to bear on the humans. This time, there would be no mercy. As the alien ships neared Earth's atmosphere, both sides prepared for battle. For the humans, this would be the ultimate test of their ingenuity, courage, and determination. For the aliens, it was a matter of pride. They couldn't afford to lose to what they had once considered a primitive species. But what neither side realized was that this battle would change the course of history forever. The unexpected nature of the human response, bolstered by creativity, resilience, and an unshakable will to win, was about to turn the tables once again. The battle for Earth was just beginning, and the final reckoning had arrived. Would the humans be able to outwit the aliens once again, or would this be the moment the alien empire crushed Earth's spirit for good? The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear: The war had only just begun. As the alien fleet drew closer, the air around Earth grew heavier with anticipation. This wasn't just another battle. This was the culmination of everything humanity had fought for. General Morgan's strategy was risky, but he knew that their best chance was to turn the tables on the alien empire in a way they had never anticipated. Humanity's strength wasn't in their technology, but in their adaptability and spirit. The time for preparation was over. Humanity had deployed every resource they had, every scrap of knowledge, and every ounce of bravery. The fleet was ready, but as they prepared for the assault, there was one thing that none of them could prepare for: the sight of the alien ships filling the sky, blotting out the stars as they descended. On the ground, Earth's population watched in dread. Their future lay in the hands of their military leaders. The streets were silent, as the people collectively held their breath, waiting for the inevitable clash. As the alien ships began their attack, their massive weapons unleashed torrents of energy toward the Earth's defenses. The sky lit up with brilliant flashes, and the ground shook as shock waves reverberated through the atmosphere. The force was overwhelming, and humanity's defenses were pushed to the brink. General Morgan stood at the command center, his eyes locked onto the screens, trying to keep track of every movement. His officers stood around him, tension palpable in the room. All units, hold position. Do not engage unless you have a clear shot, Morgan commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. But something was wrong. The aliens were using their most advanced weaponry, and yet something was off. The human fleet was taking hits, but they weren't going down. They weren't falling apart. Instead, they were adapting in real time. The alien forces, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies, found themselves facing a strategy they could not predict. Zalcor watched from his flagship, his frustration building. His forces had unleashed everything they had, but the humans were still standing. What was this? What kind of species could withstand this level of attack and keep coming? They should be crumbling under this assault, he muttered, his claws gripping the armrest of his chair. What is this madness? On Earth, the battle raged on. But the humans, using guerrilla tactics and surprise counterattacks, began to fight back with an unexpected ferocity. While the alien ships were technologically superior, the human fleet was fluid, flexible, and constantly adapting to the changing circumstances of the battle. They took advantage of every weakness, every gap in the aliens' formation. Lieutenant Harris was among the first to realize what was happening. General, they're pulling back. The aliens are retreating. Morgan squinted at the screen in disbelief. The alien fleet, once so confident in their superiority, was now retreating. It wasn't a full withdrawal, but they were losing ground. Human ships, though outnumbered, were slowly turning the tide. The battle had shifted. "This is it," Morgan said, his voice filled with a new resolve. "We've caught them off guard. Now's our chance." The humans pushed forward, relentless in their pursuit of victory. The alien fleet began to splinter, broken by the very tactics that had once been considered foolish. The humans were playing their game now, and the aliens were the ones struggling to keep up. On the alien flagship, Zalcor felt a growing sense of dread. He had never considered that humans could learn so quickly, adapt so thoroughly, and fight so fiercely. His fleet had been forced into a defensive position, something that no one had thought possible. But as the humans gained ground, Zalcor realized something else. Their fight wasn't just about winning. It was about survival. And they would not stop until they had reclaimed their planet. Zalcor turned to his advisor, Draxer. "This battle is lost. We need to retreat. Now." "But, General, if we retreat, they'll chase us. We'll be on the run," Draxer protested. "I know, but we can't afford to lose everything. We'll regroup, and next time, we will be ready for them," Zalcor said, his voice filled with a deep, frustrated resolve. He had underestimated the humans, and now he would pay the price. The alien ships began to retreat, pulling back in disarray. The humans, having gained the upper hand, pressed forward, their newfound confidence making them a formidable force. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted. People flooded the streets, cheering, crying, and embracing each other in a moment of shared triumph. The odds had been stacked against them, but humanity had defied them all. They had fought back an enemy that had been sure of its victory and proven that their spirit could never be broken. For General Morgan, it wasn't just about the victory. It was about the message it sent. The message that humanity would not be underestimated, that they would not be crushed under the weight of an invincible foe. They would rise, adapt, and fight back, no matter the odds. This is just the beginning, Morgan whispered to himself as he watched the alien ships retreat, their massive forms growing smaller in the distance. We've shown them what we're capable of, but we have much more to do. The war was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had truly shown the alien empire that they could not be so easily defeated. They had fought with everything they had, and in the end, they had won. The final reckoning was just beginning, and the humans had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. The victory over the alien fleet had left a lingering sense of triumph on Earth, but it was a short-lived celebration. As the alien ships retreated into the depths of space, the people of Earth gathered in the streets, basking in their hard-earned success. The sight of humanity standing victorious against the might of the alien empire had ignited a newfound sense of unity and pride. Yet, deep down, everyone knew this victory had just scratched the surface. General Morgan stood at the command center, staring at the large holographic display of the galaxy. The alien fleet was retreating, but their power and influence still loomed. Humanity's victory was significant, but it was only a single battle in what could very well become a long war. The war was far from over, and the real question was, what would the consequences be? "General, the Council is requesting an update," came the voice of Captain Laura, who had been by Morgan's side throughout the conflict. Her expression was serious as always, but there was an unmistakable gleam of respect in her eyes. They had done what was thought to be impossible, but she knew as well as he did that their struggle was far from finished. Morgan nodded, his mind still racing with calculations, strategies, and possibilities. The Earth's military might had won a battle, but it had never fought an empire quite like the one they had just faced. "Put them through," he said, his voice firm, but laced with the weariness of a commander who had borne the weight of victory. The holographic display flickered for a moment before the faces of Earth's High Council appeared. They were the leaders of Earth's global nations, now united in a single cause. The members wore expressions of both relief and concern. "General Morgan, we have heard the reports," said Chancellor Rios, the head of Earth's united government. "You and your forces have achieved the unimaginable. However, we must now assess the repercussions of this victory." Morgan's mind raced as he thought about the immediate aftermath. The alien fleet had been routed, but the war with the Empire was not over. He understood what the Council was concerned about: retaliation. The alien empire was powerful, and if they had learned anything from their defeat, it was that they had underestimated humanity's resolve. That mistake would not go unpunished. "Chancellor," Morgan began, his voice calm yet urgent, "this victory isn't just a battle won. It's a declaration of our ability to stand against even the most powerful forces in the galaxy. But it's also a message to the Empire. They won't just forget what happened here. We've made ourselves a target." The Council listened intently, their faces grim. They knew the stakes. Despite their shared joy over the unexpected victory, they understood that this was just the beginning. The alien empire would regroup, learn from their mistakes, and likely return with an even greater fury. "The question now," Morgan continued, "is what we do next. We have the momentum, but we need to use it wisely. We can't afford to wait for them to strike first again. We need to prepare for the next phase, both militarily and diplomatically." The Council nodded in agreement. They had no illusions about the path ahead. It would require every ounce of humanity's ingenuity every available resource, and the unity of Earth's nations to stand against an empire that was now enraged by their defeat. "We will begin immediately, General," Chancellor Rios responded, his tone resolute. "But we need to ensure that we also have the support of the other galactic factions. If we don't form alliances, the Empire could strike from unexpected directions." Morgan agreed. The war would not be won by Earth alone, no matter how successful their strategy had been. They would need the support of other species, other forces who were also under the thumb of the Empire. But that was a double-edged sword. Would the galactic community be willing to stand with Earth? Or would they, too, fall to the might of the Empire? "As we prepare for what's to come," Morgan said, "I want every ship and soldier ready for anything. And start reaching out to our allies in the galaxy. If we're going to stand a chance, we'll need them." As the council members acknowledged the orders and the holographic display faded, Morgan took a deep breath. His eyes flickered over the screens, scanning the galaxy, considering all the angles. He had seen how powerful the Empire was firsthand, but he had also seen the strength of humanity. What had started as a desperate fight for survival had now become the beginning of something much bigger. Humanity was no longer just a small, insignificant species on the edge of the galaxy. They had earned their place in the stars, and now they had the responsibility to defend it. The general's thoughts drifted to the faces of his soldiers, the brave men and women who had stood firm in the face of overwhelming odds. They had smiled in the face of battle, laughed at the fearsome alien forces, and fought with a relentless spirit. He knew that if humanity was to stand any chance against the Empire, it would be because of their unbreakable will. And with that, General Morgan turned back to his officers, preparing for the long road ahead. The aliens might have retreated, but the real battle had just begun. The sound of victory still echoed through the streets, but it was mixed with uncertainty. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. General Morgan knew this better than anyone. As he stood at the heart of the military command center, looking out at the horizon where the last of the alien ships had fled, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Despite the triumph, Earth had suffered losses. Many lives had been sacrificed, and the damage to the cities was visible. There was no denying the cost of this victory, and Morgan knew that humanity's future would never be the same. The aliens might have been forced to retreat, but they were not defeated. The invasion had been halted, but the threat was not gone. Morgan walked slowly through the command center, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. The leaders of the world would need to come together to rebuild and prepare for what would surely be another invasion. The alien empire wouldn't forget Earth so easily. Their shock at humanity's resilience would fuel their determination to return. And yet, as Morgan looked out over the team of engineers and military officers working tirelessly, he felt something else. Hope. Humanity had faced the greatest threat it had ever known and come through victorious. They had shown the universe what they were capable of, and that, he believed, was something that no one could take away from them. Across the globe, people began to rebuild. The streets, once filled with fear and chaos, were now alive with renewed energy. In cities that had once been under alien attack, workers cleaned up the wreckage, while families reunited and celebrated. The world seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. But even as the celebrations continued, the Earth's leaders knew that they couldn't afford to rest for long. The Empire's retreat was not a permanent solution. Humanity had only survived this battle because they had adapted quickly and fought with everything they had. But the next time, the aliens would be ready, and humanity needed to be prepared. As the Earth worked toward its recovery, General Morgan called for the formation of an elite task force. A group of soldiers, scientists, and strategists who would work around the clock to develop new technologies, strategies, and alliances. The war had shown them that the only way to survive in the universe was to constantly evolve, and the human race was ready for that challenge. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of space, the alien fleet was regrouping. Zalcor, now back aboard his flagship, seethed with frustration. His retreat had been a tactical decision, but it didn't sit well with him. The humans had humiliated him, and he was determined to make them pay. The next time they clashed, he would be prepared. Prepare for the next stage, Zalcor ordered, his voice filled with bitterness. We will return, and we will crush them. But even as he spoke, a thought lingered in his mind. A seed of doubt. Could his empire really defeat humanity? After all, these humans had survived against all odds, and they had already proven that they could adapt to anything the galaxy threw at them. Zalcor's thoughts were interrupted as an officer entered the room. General Zalcor, we've received new intelligence, the officer said, his voice shaky. It appears the humans are preparing, in ways we didn't expect. Zalcor's eyes narrowed. Explain. The officer hesitated before speaking. It seems they've begun to reverse engineer some of our technology. They're building ships, weapons. They're preparing for war. Zalcor's expression darkened. So they're not just waiting for us to return. They're preparing to fight us on their terms. The officer nodded. Yes, General. And they're already forming alliances with other species. We may have underestimated them. Zalcor stood silent for a moment, the weight of the situation sinking in. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't felt before. Fear. The humans weren't just surviving. They were thriving. We must act quickly, Zalcor said, his voice cold. We cannot allow them to grow stronger. But deep inside, he couldn't help but wonder. Could anyone truly defeat a species that smiled in the face of death? Back on Earth, General Morgan stood before a group of scientists and engineers, preparing for the next phase of humanity's strategy. The war might have been over for now, but the future was uncertain. The aliens would return, and when they did, humanity needed to be ready. We've won a battle, but we haven't won the war, Morgan said, his voice steady yet filled with urgency. It's time to start building, learning, and growing. We need to push the limits of what we know. The aliens are coming back, and this time, we will be ready. The room was filled with a mix of determination and resolve. Humanity was a species born from struggle and hardship, but also one that thrived on ingenuity and creativity. And as the sun set over the horizon, it became clear, Earth would not back down. The aliens may have shocked humanity, but humanity had shocked them right back. And in the end, it was the humans who would determine their future. The final reckoning was yet to come, and humanity would face it with a smile.